introduce the gospel story we're going to be thinking about today. It's really great. Through this season of Lent, we've been walking with Jesus to Jerusalem for his destiny with the cross. And now, all of the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger son said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and set off for a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But he came to himself and said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am, dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.'" So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion and ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to his father, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called yours." But the father said to his slaves, "Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Get the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Now, his older son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. And he responded, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. So his father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Listen, all these years I have been working like a slave for you and never disobeyed your command, and yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But now this son of yours came back, and you killed the fatted calf for him." His father said to him, "Son, you are always with me. Everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate. This brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost I'm sure you all recognize this very familiar story of Jesus. We call it the Prodigal Son. It's in Luke chapter 15, verses 1 to 3, and then most of it there in 11 to 32. We know the story. It's very familiar. But as we listen to it, in the space between failure and truth, our own failures, as well as those of the people around us, we can hear the voice of God. And hear God whispering, it all comes from me. Even if we don't think about the important place that this story has in Jesus' teaching, it is the epitome of the storyteller's art. It is very compact, and yet the details are very vivid. We can all see what's going on there. The characters are colorful and complex. There's relational tension and drama. There's mystery. We wonder what's going to happen here. And it is a story that was told. Jesus didn't write down a bunch of stories and publish them as a collected works that you could order on Amazon. They were meant to be spoken, and they were meant to be heard. That's part of the reason that every Sunday I try to tell you a gospel story so that you can have that experience of hearing those stories as Jesus told them. That story has also inspired quite a bit of other wonderful art. One of the best, I think, is Rembrandt's Return of the Prodigal Son. It hangs in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, Russia. You can see a larger version of this, or a full-size version, not full-size, but I mean the version you can see. If you use the QR code on the back of your bulletin or go to that website. There's also some other things that Rembrandt did based on this story that are there, including one that is a self-portrait where Rembrandt portrays himself as the prodigal son during the time of wild living. You'll find that a fascinating piece to look at. I have to tell you that this story kind of makes me cringe. Even as a kid, watching things as innocent as Leave It to Beaver on television, I know I'm dating myself. But when I saw one of those characters heading in the direction where I knew they were going to get in trouble, I'd even get queasy in the knees, and I'd say, "Don't do that!" And even while I'm telling you the story here this morning, something deep inside of me wants to cry out and scream to that younger son, "Stop! You'll be sorry!" And I want to say to that older brother, regardless of how you feel, smile, go in and hug your brother or you'll regret it. And I ache for the unrecoverable losses in this story. Part of the genius of this story is where Jesus stops. He urges that older brother to come in. He tells the older brother that he's really got all of his love, all of everything. And that's where the story stops, and we don't know how everybody responds after that. And I think that that's quite purposeful. It leaves us with a lot of questions. Questions that Jesus intends to work deep into our hearts. The first question is pretty obvious. Did that older brother go in? And if he did he greet his brother? And what did he say to him? And how did they feel? And if he didn't, if he hung around outside, what was going on in his emotions as he heard everybody else in there with the music and the dancing? And that younger brother, he had in mind that he could sneak home and blend in with the hired hands. And how does he feel becoming the center of attention, wearing the best robe and having everybody coming up to him and saying, "Good to see you, how are you, how have you been?" And he goes, "Not so good." And the father, how does he feel as this party is going on? He's got this great joy that his son is back. But but he's got the pain of knowing what's been lost. And then he's got this new pain of what's happened, this distance that has opened up between him and his older brother, older son, because of this. That's right there in the party. But then, of course, the party is over, and the next day, other things have to happen. And the days going forward, other things have to happen. That younger son has to do something. He no longer has a stake in the estate. Does he become one of his father's hired hands? Does he live in the family house, or does he live in the servants' quarters? Does he scrape together some money so that he can get a place to live in town and get a different job? How do the two brothers interact as they just pass each other in their daily routines? What happened in the relationship between the father and each of those sons of his? I mean, when that younger son came home, something changed in the relationship between that father and both of those sons permanently. Never going to be the same again. And then maybe the biggest question of all is, what do the two sons do when their father dies? Who stands where at their father's funeral? And if the younger one is still working for the estate, does his older brother fire him? Do the brothers reconcile? Or does their relationship dissolve and they go their separate ways? Does that younger one hold on to his guilt and shame? Does the older one cling to his resentment? What happens? Those are not questions just to analyze the story. Those are questions that work down into our own hearts. Jesus, I think, is asking a different kind of question of us. He's saying, do you have the same kind of sense of entitlement that got the younger son into trouble in the first place? But you wouldn't say it this way. We know that it's kind of impolite and not, the way it's really supposed to be. But do you have a feeling sometimes that you deserve what you got and the world owes you something and you should get even better than what you've got and, shouldn't have all these problems, it should be good? Or maybe you have the same kind of sense of entitlement that the older son has. I've worked for what I've got. I deserve these things. I work hard. They belong to me. Jesus is asking a much more profound question, getting at something much deeper than just the truism that with every responsibility, with every privilege comes a responsibility. Jesus is going beyond that. And we see some of that in what we read from Joshua. There are the children of Israel coming, getting ready to enter the promised land. They're going to be free people in a free country of their own and eat the produce of that land, the land flowing with milk and honey. And so the very last things they do before they go in, they renew the covenant with their circumcision. They celebrate Passover. Why? Why celebrate Passover? The manna is going to stop. They're going to start eating the fruit of the land. And God is reminding them, you were slaves. You are now free. And you didn't free yourselves. I freed you. Don't ever forget that. You need to be there. And then the Apostle Paul brings this really right down to us. In 2 Corinthians 5:18, he's really saying that the redemption that you have in Jesus, as well as the ministry of reconciliation by which you call other people to follow Jesus, is all from me. You didn't do that yourself. I gave that to you. I gave you your forgiveness, and I gave you the ministry, the privilege of calling other people to Jesus as well. There is something spiritually very dangerous about prosperity. Prosperity distorts the way we look at ourselves. and ego creep, you want to think of that as a word, pushes God to the edge, to the periphery, where God's just on the boundaries, the margins of our life, not the core of our life. Again, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 17, just before Israel is going into the promised land, Moses warns them, when you get there and you prosper, and you have your farms, and everything is looking good and you're feeling great, do not say to yourself, by my own hand and by my own might I have gotten this wealth. Remember, it was given to you by God. Paul again brings that right down to us in 1 Corinthians 4:7. He says, what do you have that you have not received? And if you have received it, why do you boast as if it was not a gift? It is a gift. And that's where we are. In this space between our failures and our forgiveness. Ours and that all around us, when we observe that happening, we hear the voice of God saying, it's all from me. The church I served in New Jersey had a rather extensive low-income housing ministry, and because of that, we had the opportunity to have Miller Fuller, the founder of Habitat for Humanity, come and speak one time. And he was a fascinating guy to listen to. I would say that much of his life, he was both the older brother and the younger brother. He was somebody who was deeply flawed, who in grace, God